Okay. I like to start with references. So essentially, the entirety of this talk, particularly the theoretical part about why we should do wise reflections, comes from the book Wise Reflection: Importance of Ioniso Manasikara by Steve Weisman. So it's available online. I'll also share the link here in the chat for you, and afterwards in the chat in the Slack as well. So you can download it here, and it's really great. Like it, in my view, it really introduces well why one should do this. And the practical part about how to introduce the practice comes mainly from Mark. So after pestering him for a while, he introduced it, how he likes to teach it, and so I'm using that as a basis. And in order to emphasize, like to start reasoning why we should do wise reflections, I would like to start with a quotation from the Buddha, from the suttas. And there the Buddha says, "I say that getting rid of anxieties and troubles is possible for one who knows and sees, not for one who does not know and see. What one must know and see in order to get rid of anxieties and troubles? Wise reflection and unwise reflection. For one who reflects unwisely, there arise anxieties and troubles that have not yet arisen, and those that have already arisen increase. But for one who reflects wisely, anxieties and troubles that have not yet arisen do not arise, and those already arisen disappear." So that's one of the many places in the suttas where the Buddha actually stresses the importance of wise reflection. And thinking about it further, one of the main reasons why we actually practice meditation is to alleviate suffering, right? Be it our suffering or the suffering of others. And as a quick reminder, pain is necessary. We are in the 8 worldly winds of pleasure, pain, gain, loss, praise, criticism, fame, and obscurity. Those will always be there. So we can't, no matter how much we practice, these 4 opposites will always be present. But we have ways to work with or reduce our mental suffering. And simply put, it's wrong thinking that produces our mental suffering, our dukkha. And therefore, right thinking will end our mental suffering, our dukkha. And the purpose of wise reflection is to develop right thinking. And this can also be viewed in the connection with the Noble Eightfold Path, right? The 4 noble truths are: there is suffering, there is a way to get out of the suffering. The first one is there is suffering. The second one is how does suffering come to be. The third one is there is a way out of the suffering. And the fourth one is how to get out of the suffering. And the answer how to get out of the suffering is the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path consists of right speech, right action, right livelihood. That's the sila part of it, also related to ethics. Then there is mental discipline, which are also 3: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And finally, there's the wisdom part of it, right view and right intention. Now, the problem is we can't just develop those 8 limbs of the Eightfold Path one after the other, because we can't do right speech without some level of wisdom, right? And the same holds also for developing concentration. As long as we don't have the wisdom to live properly and we continue to harming others and create harm, we will not get proper concentration. And so actually, we need right view and wisdom in order to develop the other parts of the Eightfold Path as well. And so somehow all these parts of the Eightfold Path, they depend on each other, and we need to develop them together. And actually, out of this Eightfold Path, the Buddha said, right view comes first. So right view, actually the number 7 or 8 of the Eightfold Path, includes understandings of the Four Noble Truths, which I just mentioned, and also the law of karma, which is the focus or the reflection we are gonna do later. So, and the law of karma basically says that there are results to wholesome and unwholesome actions. And those understandings are really essential for our practice. And in order to be a good meditator and to get right concentration, which is the shamatha part, or part of the shamatha path of the path, we have to develop right view first. And that's why wise reflection can be so helpful. And this is a little bit contrary to the myth that concentration alone is enough for developing insight. Somehow many people think, it's true that we can learn a lot by practicing shamatha. There's a lot of cleaning up which happens and we learn a lot about ourselves. But if you think about the story of the Buddha, actually his first teacher taught him almost the highest level of concentration possible. And eventually the Buddha realized it was not enough. He didn't get completely liberated with his first teacher. And then the Buddha went to the second teacher, and that taught him literally the most refined concentration possible. So that was stuff which was already known before the Buddha. But still, the Buddha wasn't liberated and he wasn't satisfied with that. And so he actually left that second teacher as well and continued practicing. And in order to eventually found the way out of suffering, which was not just purely by doing concentration practice. And so finally, the Buddha eventually sat down under a tree on the eve of his enlightenment and started practicing concentration. And that's why many people think when the Buddha got enlightened, he was practicing concentration practice. But that's also a myth, actually. He started his practice on that evening with concentration practice, but then he did wise reflection. So actually at the moment of getting enlightened, the Buddha was meditating on dependent origination. And that's wise reflection on a very deep level, actually. So we start finding a lot of reasons why wise reflections can be very beneficial. In the book, Steve, also Steve and Rosemary Steve, he speaks about some people in his retreat, and I would like to read a little section of what he wrote. So he writes, there have been other people addicted to drugs who came to our center and learned the meditation techniques taught here, including wise reflections. They made a commitment not to take drugs during the retreat. Many of them made their resolution after the retreat never to take drugs again and kept that resolution. The resolution not to take drugs again did not come from the mindfulness practice, but it came from wise reflection on the suffering, the dukkha, of using drugs, not only for themselves but also for others. They gave it up through compassion for themselves and others. They may not have had strong concentration, but more importantly, they used their practice to develop wisdom and compassion, changing their lives in a positive way. So that was some reasons directly coming from the suttas and from the experience of Rosemary and Steve, which taught meditation for 30 plus years, about the importance of these practices. And they're also a fixed part of their retreats. And a little bit more now on a rational or on a level which I can use to explain why reflection can be useful for people even on the street or so, people who are not really interested in Buddhism, is to think about the topic of learning from experience, because that's at the end what we do. We try to get experiential insights, and so we want to learn from our experience. And Steve also quotes Earl Warren, the United States Supreme Court Justice. And that person says, the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn. So, does experience automatically lead to wisdom? No, right? We all experience a lot of stuff, and often we run into the same troubles over and over again. But we can still increase our ability to learn from experience. So in general, we have a hard time learning from experience. But we can increase our ability to learn from experience. And that's how? By reflecting on our experience. So we have to think about it. We have to think whether what we have done or is beneficial or not. We have to examine it, investigate it, and understand what actually happened and what caused it to happen and what the consequences of it are. And here we are again with the reflection on karma, right? If we look at that closely, then using DMI terms, we're training all our subminds to get it. While otherwise, most of our and that's also where the concentration practice comes in again. If we tune our mind in on things, if you get concentrated on the thing we're reflecting on, then a lot of our subminds listen and will learn it and will update their views and beliefs. So in this way, concentration practice also makes the wise reflection practice much more efficient. And yeah, exactly. So we have to reflect on it. And since we're good in the time, I had another story of the Buddha, because the Buddha himself taught this even to his own son, Rahula, at the age of 7. So we can start learning this quite early. So he was encouraging him to think wisely about what the son had done, what he is doing at the moment, and what he will do. And he encouraged Rahula not only to do this with every physical activity, but also with verbal and mental activities. And so how it's written in the suttas, the instruction is, regarding any activity, one should reflect. Is it leading to self-affliction, to the affliction of others, or to both? Is it an unskillful activity with painful consequences, painful results? If on reflection you know that it is leading to self-affliction, to the affliction of others, or both, it is an unskillful activity with painful consequences, painful results. Then any activities of this sort is absolutely inappropriate for you to do. But if, on reflection, you know that it is not leading to self-affliction, to the affliction of others, or both, it is a skillful activity with happy consequences, happy results. Then any activity of this sort is appropriate for you to do. So the Buddha taught his own son to think wisely about all activities, whether already done, in the process of being done, or yet to be done. And it's quite easy. Like, we can do this as well. If a 7-year-old son of the Buddha can do it, we can do it as well. We can think of the results. Which sutta is this from? The sutta has the name with Rahula inside. I will quote it afterwards. I spared you the name and removed it from the notes. Let me note. Okay. Now, one more point here. Actually, 2 more points which I would like to highlight. One is that we don't even have to experience something to learn from that experience and develop wisdom. So we can, as the Buddha taught his son, reflect wisely on something before it happened. Or we can also reflect on the experiences of other people. So we don't even have to go through it. We can read the newspaper, listen what people tell us, observe others, and then reflect on their experience and avoid actually having to go through the suffering they have to do and still develop the insight. The second point I would like to make is in favor of taking notes. So this is something people differ a lot, and you can still do however you want to do it. But when I read this, I was thinking, yes, that's exactly why I like to take notes, for example, quite extensively, sometimes also too extensively probably, when Mark speaks or during lectures. And again in the suttas, in several of them, the Buddha at the beginning says something like, listen and heed well to what I shall say. And what Steve makes out of this, he says, what does heed well mean? It means reflect and follow this advice. So in other words, one could have said, if you wish to avoid dukkha, you must listen carefully to what I say, you must reflect wisely on it, and you must follow it accordingly. And at least to me, like, my memory is not so good that I remember what a teacher told me. Even at the end of the class, I don't remember most of it, even less 2 years later. But I actually find myself looking at old notes of how stuff was taught and to reflect on it again, or reflect on it before the last class. And to me, it feels like it has contributed to my growing understanding. So a little point on taking notes. And of course, like, it's not just good. It's good to take notes, but it's also important to then look at them again. I think Confucius said something like, learning something and repeating it from time to time, isn't that a joy? And like that was not the proper quote, but like something in this direction. And I really find this, like, actually keeping alive things we learned once, it's really beautiful. It also takes way less effort than learning it for the first time, and it prevents them from going away. Okay. Now, you have heard a long list of things why you should practice wise reflections. I hope you're motivated for it now. The next thing we will talk about is how to practice them. And it's actually quite easy, because we just think about something and reflect on it, and there's different reflections we can do. So one more point, for all these reflections, like for any other practice, it's good if you try to find your way to it. And there's different people who like different ways of doing it. And for some people, for example, visualizing stuff can be very helpful. And for other people, just thinking about it analytically or so can be good. So you can play with that as well. And in terms of what to reflect on, there's 5 reflections, which both are the ones Steve and Rosemary reference in their retreats, and also the ones Mark mentioned. And 3 of them Mark introduced already last year sometimes. These are reflecting on how fortunate we are and how precious our opportunity. Do I just feel it, or are more people taking notes now? That would make me very happy. So one is how fortunate we are and how precious our opportunity is. The second one is death and impermanence. And the third one Mark introduced already is dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, as Steve calls it. And the 2 other ones is karma, what we are talking about today, the law of cause and effect. And the second one is the balancing compassion and equanimity. So I intend to teach that next time I will teach. So let's hope that happens as well.
You say compassion and equanimity?
Yes, compassion and equanimity. And however, in the book on wise reflections, there's several more types of wise reflections which Steve lists. And there's the 5 daily recollections, which the Buddha recommends to reflect on daily, obviously. There's the reflection, the 5 on the 4 noble truths. There's impermanence. There's impermanence. And when I was reading them, I got actually quite excited to explore them and get to know more of them. And so I actually decided to work through them slowly and like easily, lightly over the next weeks. So I was thinking of maybe doing something like each of them for a week or 2, maybe 10 minutes or something like this, as long as I want. And I thought, if any of you is interested, we could even start a little series where for 1 or 2 weeks we pick one of them and then we just share our experiences. Okay, I see a lot of nodding heads. So what I will do is like I'll make a little announcement and create a Slack channel for that, like a Slack channel, an open one for that, and everyone who wants can join. And cool. This is exciting. So and then we can decide also a little bit together if we want a week more or less on something and discuss on them. And and in the next session I will teach. We can see if we want to talk more about it or how we do it. Yeah, cool. So we have that as well. My next session will be on November 17th probably. So it might still shift, but earliest November 17th. So we have almost 2 months for doing that. Cool. Okay. Now the reflection. So this was the theoretical part. Any questions about these things so far? Okay, actually, let me see what's in the chat. Okay, perfect. Yeah, good. Now, let's talk about the reflection on the wise reflection on karma, on the law of cause and effect. So, in essence, we look at our actions and then we look at their causes and results. And the main point of doing this reflection is to learn that everything which happens, and with actions actually also mean thoughts, speech, actions, like all of it. That everything which happens has a huge network of cause and effect, like a huge network of impact in both directions. So somehow something your parent did to you 10 years ago is still with you, and probably they did it because of something their parents or like the whole world did to them. So it's like a huge network which is infinitely large. And in the same way, also the network downstream is infinitely large. So if I practice a little bit more meditation today and I become a little bit kinder, that might affect somebody around me and that might affect them and so on. And so also there, the impact is huge. And the same thing obviously with less skillful things. If I insult somebody, that might create anger and they might spread it to their network, and so it's big. And this recognition comes with us being in this, having this one moment, like this moment right now in the present moment, where we can actually affect this network. And we can augment this causal change for the benefit, for more benefit and less detriment. So essentially by reflecting on karma, we can learn that right now we have a super precious opportunity to change the world for the better. And that's sadly something which we tend to overlook, or the untrained mind tends to overlook this fact. And if a mind, on the other hand, thinks that things which are done or said or thought don't have a consequence, then there is little incentive to do good stuff, right? And to do the right thing. The other extreme is, like Marx said it like this: if we would really be aware what this law of karma means, that something we do now engenders years of behavior, then we would select our behaviors more carefully. And then mindfulness of the present moment would not something we need to build. It would just be there because it's so important. We would automatically be mindful if we knew this, because it's just we know how that everything has consequences. Furthermore, it's super insight generating to think about karma, because baked into what I just said, there is a no self insight. What you do right now, what you think right now, if your mind wanders right now, that's not only yours. That's because of a whole chain of cause and effect. I mean, there's genetic components. So that means it's your ancestors, which somehow influence if you have mind wandering right now. Not even to speak about what happens this morning and in the last week, and if you have stress at work, etc. So there's no self-insight baked into this. Obviously, there's also the causal interdependence of phenomena baked into that, because this is it, right? Like that's what you're reflecting on. It's like the causal interdependence of phenomena, like cause and effect. Anything which happens, also things we think, they have an effect. There's this phrase which I probably not quote properly right now, but it's something like what you think becomes what you. I simplify it. Probably it's like what you think becomes what you do, and what you do becomes a habit, and what becomes a habit becomes your character, and what becomes your character then becomes your destiny. Something like that. Like anyway, I don't need to explain that to you, but I still say it, like even what we think has an effect. And therefore what we meditate has an effect. Like when we meditate, we also think, right? And so it's important. And also that means it's super important to be kind to ourselves while we're meditating. Because if we're beating ourselves up while meditating, we're training ourselves to beat ourselves up while meditating. So that's also why it's super important to learn a skillful way to deal with hindrances. And so, yeah, I might also do a session on hindrances eventually, because I think that's really cool how Steve and Rosemary teach that as well. I was with the insight generatingness. So we have no self, we have causal interdependence and suffering, obviously. Like we can, if you reflect on karma, we can see very well how suffering comes to be. Yes, final point. It also helps with hopelessness. So hopelessness also comes from, or hopelessness and helplessness. I'm not sure if actually I confused them while preparing, but basically learned helplessness means also has to do with thinking I can't do anything right now. Like I'm stuck, like I can't really decide what's gonna happen with me. And if we realize this huge network of cause and effect, we actually realize that even by thinking we have an effect. So that's actually superpowers, and they're contrary to not being able to do anything. Okay, now I feel like I'm going fast. I'm trying to take breaks, but it's not so easy. If there's any questions, just raise them, but they will be recorded. You can tell me not to record them, and I stop the recording for a moment. Yeah, Becky?
I don't know if it's worth also sort of drawing attention to vipaka, because karma is often talked about as karma paka, as in karma being the action, or like the volition, and the vipaka being sort of the seed, like the fruition,
the result,
of the action, the result. So it's like the action and the result. And sometimes I find it really useful to make that distinction, because so often sometimes you make assumptions about what your action will actually cause, but the whole point of this reflection is to maybe notice the effect of what you've done.
Both, right? So actually I think it's called the law of karma, but actually you're right. Karma just means cause, if I'm not mistaken it too. There's also the effect. So the full name of the law is the law of cause and effect. So it should be karma vipaka. I also read that somewhere. Thank you for pointing this out. And exactly, so I mean it's both, right? Like if we then meditate on it, we will think about an instance of some thought or some behavior, and we think about the causes and the effect of what we do. And the effect of what you do then causes other stuff. So yeah, I think karma vipaka is a good way to think about it.
Can I share something about like a direct example of this?
Please.
Because some years ago I was much more involved in like climate movements and demonstrations, and you have the idea, like if you're doing this action, that it's meaningful and things like this, but sort of having that acknowledgement of reflecting and recognizing the result of an action, you can actually have more of a sense of the quality of the action based on the outcome. Because so often I was doing things with the assumption that it was the right thing to do, but without that reflection of like, oh, is this actually contributing to any benefit for myself or the wider cause? Then I'm aware that so many people are just like doing things with the good intentions, but not really recognizing that the result might be a bit fruitless.
Yeah.
Or even counterproductive, no?
Yeah,
Causing more violence or
I have two things there. Yes, but also we can't really know. Like, this thing is so complicated that even if you see some negative result, to say that it was wrong is kind of impossible to say, because there's an infinite amount of possibilities. And so as far as I know, and I mean, that's now dogma, but it kind of makes sense to me, and you can check it for yourself or look into the suttas. What actually determines the karmic outcome is the intention. So when you said they have the right intention, then they're good. The key part, though, is checking the intentions, because particularly something which I think happens sometimes with activists is that they do something good, like protecting the climate maybe, but there might be a root intention of anger or fear. And then it's the anger or fear determine the karmic outcome. So I think it's super important to check the intentions, and that's the best we can do. So I think that's also something we have to learn, and being aware of what the intentions are. And that's also important during the practice, of course. Like when we're thinking about the thing we are meditating on, we can think about why we did it, right? And then we can go deeper and deeper. We can think, okay, I did this because I don't like how this person behaves. And then we can go deeper and it's like, why do I not like how this person behaves? And we might actually come to a non-self insight even there, because maybe I don't like how he behaves means I misunderstand fundamentally how the world is made. Because if I would recognize that I'm something permanently changing and they're something permanently changing, and somehow there's no fixed thing which continues bothering me, then I would also not get too fed up with them. So there's a lot of potential for insight there as well. So, and about the intentions, I also wanted to say there is kind of this another chain reaction or chain of causes and effects which make something happen. And that's the chain of belief systems, intentions, and then thoughts, speech, action, etc. And the thing is, it's very hard for us to see our belief system. It's like the belief system is like, I've never publicly used these metaphors, I'm not sure if it works, but I imagine the belief system to be like roads without lights on them in the night. So we can't really see them. And our intentions are like in the night, cars with their lights on driving down these roads. So the belief system or the road network affects how the cars drive. So our belief system affects what intentions come to be. But I can't really see the belief system, but I can observe the intentions. So the best kind of we can do to get to our beliefs is to be careful with our intentions, observe them, and then maybe ask where our intentions come from. And if maybe there's a belief which might be true or might not be true, or if it's helpful or not, and then if we, through observing our intentions, we find our way back to a belief which is not so helpful, like for example, anything which causes suffering, then we can work on updating that belief. So that's why I think observing one's intention is super powerful. And those intentions then are what causes you to think, do, etc. something. Cool. Now, let's talk a little bit about how to practice this wise reflection. So the wise reflection karma is one of the most amorphous ones of these reflections, and that means there's a lot of flexibility in how to teach or to practice it. The essence is we look at actions, and then we look at their causes and results, and that's it. And that's why I also personally was struggling in knowing if I'm practicing it correctly for a long time, because it can be a lot of things, and I didn't feel so secure in that, and that's why I asked Mark about it. Can you
repeat? It's look at actions and then look at their cause and result. Is that
exactly? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Actions.
So how does it fit with, we can only look at our intentions and the results we can actually really see?
Yeah. So let's say I talked to my partner and I got nervous about something, and then my voice is a little bit too loud and offends her. That would be the action. If then at the end of the day I sit down and I think through the day and I realize, okay, this situation is maybe something I want to look at, then I can start looking at, okay, what caused me to talk like this, and then I can see intentions there. So basically, I can see, oh, maybe the intention was, I don't know, to not be bothered or to push them away or to trying to say something which makes sense now. Yeah, or to finish something at work because I was working while I got interrupted or so. So we can look at the intentions as a precursor to our actions. But not only, like it's not only intentions, but it's super helpful when I think about why I did something or why am I going to do something about the intentions. And then downstream with the results, I can look at, actually there is also intentions there, because the result of this conversation might be my partner feeling maybe less secure, and then there come intentions which might also not be so helpful intentions from that. Like for example, another time not interrupting me because the intention is not to be then talked to in a bad way or something like this. So yeah, does this answer the question? Cool. So how do we pick the actions? The thing I will suggest today, and that's one way to do it, is to reflect on the last day or the last set time period since you have done this reflection last time. You can scan the day and pick some skillful and some less skillful actions and then use them to do these reflections. You can, however, also pick any other skillful or unskillful behavior of yourself or of somebody else. And it's definitely also a good idea to sometimes pick something like from others. So it's good to look our own lives first, but it's also good to learn from others, because then we don't have to make the mistakes and go to the dukkha ourselves. The reason why, some reasons which came to mind why it can be good to do it regularly, scanning my own day. And that's what I felt also during the last days when I was preparing for this and doing the practice, is actually things are still alive. Like if I sit down in the evening after sticking to this example of having had a day and like talking in a too nervous way with my partner, then that's still there. And since not all causes and conditions change from today to tomorrow, probably it will also be there tomorrow. And so actually the things I learn, I can immediately apply them the day afterwards. And I did, and it works. Like it was amazing. So by doing this reflection regularly, I can learn very useful stuff, useful to my immediate behavior and thereby also to my karma somehow. The second reason is, if you do it like by scanning your day every day, there is like new things to think about every day. And yeah, that's it. So it's a life, you get new things that you can apply what you learned. Some more theoretical points before we transition to the practice. Now, there are near and far enemies to also in this reflection. So like if you, as a little memory aid, for example, for loving kindness, we have the far enemy, which is hatred, which is like kind of the opposite of what we want to cultivate. And then we have the near enemy, which is attachment to somebody or something, which can feel a little bit like loving kindness, but it's still different and it's still a miss. And for this reflection on karma, the far enemy is helplessness, like I can't change anything, or distracting myself or numbing myself with drugs, for example, or also like anxiety, like how to do it. The near enemy is letting yourself slip towards this bad state of the mind too much. Like if I reflect on my day, and I only see bad stuff I did, and then I start hating myself or feeling ashamed, then that's also a miss. Like, we're not training here to feel how we're destroying the world with our network effects of bad actions, right? We're trying to see that reality is so interconnected, and what we do has cause and effect, but at the end of the day, we want to train our mind to act better. And since we know that also thoughts have their consequences, training ourselves to think better of ourselves is not what we want to do. Side note, in general, I find it super helpful in meditation to think about it as training the mind, we know that, but also as what we do in the meditation itself, and kind of the things we're thinking there and feeling, they somehow train our mind to do it in a similar way again. And so, again, if we continue to get fed up with ourselves because our mind wanders, then somehow we're training ourselves to get fed up if mind wanders. So basically everything we do, we somehow train ourselves to do more of it. In some way. Then if you reflect on it wisely, it can be different. I'm not sure about this point. Like, let me see. Maybe I need to correct here. Yeah, I think there is something that by doing something we train ourselves to do more of it, but there is also reflecting on it. And probably if you do something, for example, I wasn't planning to say that like this, but for example, there's even a way. Like, you could take the example of somebody smoking. So if I smoke, then like, I guess that every time I smoke, I get a little bit more addicted to smoking. So this would be the first thing. Like, I smoke and somehow I train my mind to smoke. But then the trick with the reflection is there is smoking cessation programs which allow people to continue smoking, but to be super mindful of what happens to them while they smoke. So then actually, they continue smoking, but the thing they're training is paying attention to how maybe there's a feeling of addiction. Like, I've never been addicted to smoke, but so I imagine how it will be. Like, I have to smoke, and I feel this pressure building up that they need to go smoke. Then they go out in the cold and like smoke this cigarette and feel all the bad smell and getting cold and so on. By observing that carefully, they actually learn to stop smoking. But then actually the thing they're training with this behavior is less the smoking, but more the observing the cause and effect of the smoking, and then that trains the system to not smoke again. Okay, so I hope this wasn't too confusing, but in general, I think we can say that things we do, they engender further actions in some way. Was this good? Give me a show of hands if this was completely confusing and you want a clarification. No? Okay. Good. Then another cool point, which also touches on shamatha practice. Mark was saying it's good to teach this wise reflection on karma after people have done some shamatha practice. Why? Because first, with shamatha practice, you actually learn a super important meta skill. And this is really at the core of what we're doing in shamatha development. We learn to feel good if there is a miss. So we learn to, if we detect that the mind wandered, we feel good about it first. We give the mind compliments. Yeah, you detected it wanders, great. We're not beating ourselves up, it happens, right? So we're actually, the meta learning from shamatha practice is, we see that we did a mistake or had a miss, we catch it and correct it immediately. And that's a hard thing to do. But here with the karma reflection, we can go a step further. We can look at our entire day, detect all the misses, and then correct them on the spot. And that's the fastest thing we can do in order to wake up and to grow. Because imagine you just reduce the number of misses every day. Then you get better automatically. So it's good to teach people with mind wandering first, because mind wandering is not something so bad where it's still super hard to learn to be happy to have detected mind wandering. But once you can do that, you can go through your day and detect all the places where there was a miss and then correct them immediately and get a little bit better every day. And you could even add some gamification to it. You could, if let's say there's a a repeated thing. Like you're always getting whatever, nervous with your partner, in order to stay with that example, you can count it. And then you can try reduce the number of misses every day. Amazing, right? So you have a little gamification going on that helps you to stay motivated to reduce this number further. Last point before we go direction practice is, of course, if something comes up in practice and like, or during this review of the day, we do the karma practice and we detect some stuff which is going on, which makes us behave or feel or whatever in not such a skillful way. I mean, we can't feel in a non-skillful way. Let's say react in a not so skillful way. Then we can obviously use our usual tool set. We can, like, let's say, for example, one realizes that they are dishonest because they think they're not lovable. Then we could, for example, start practicing loving kindness on ourselves. Or if there's a lot of worries about the future, then reflection on death could be a good practice. So what I'm trying to say, this reflection can uncover things, but of course you can then go and work with your tool set. And I think that's one of the really cool things we're learning here, also in this community, is that we get a tool set and we learn to know when to use which tool and then to apply it. So, and somehow navigate our own way through our minds and lives and everything. Yes. So that's it. From the theory. Is there any questions right now? Okay. So we're gonna do a guided practice, where we will scan the last day and look at some skill. One important thing. We now talked a lot about effect, and I feel maybe we tended a little bit towards negative actions. That's not at all the case that we should only do wise reflection on karma on negative things. On the contrary, like we can do it for months only on positive things and we will still learn. Because if we only reflect on the good stuff we did in the last 24 hours, in the last day, months, whatever, then we will still learn that there is a cascade of causes and effects which make that happen to us. Like if I'm doing something skillful today, I can also not go around like with the flag saying, yeah, I'm the best, because also there, the same, it's not just me, right? It's also my parents and also my environment and everything else. So we learn that there's this. We see how our good actions or skillful actions affect others. So we see the downstream cascade of effects as well. So basically we can also learn a lot with positive things. So that's also why in our practice now we look at some skillful actions, then we will look at some unskillful actions, and since all of you are pros, we're gonna add an optional Tonglen aspect to it, where we imagine the negative aspects of which we brought into our network of cause and effect as some smoke. And then we actually breathe in that smoke to purify the network from it and breathe out what we actually would like to give into the network. And exactly. And that's also something you can do if you like and you can not do if you don't like. So what I actually wanted to say is that you can do it like I guided, but if you feel that today it's a little bit too much to emphasize too much on negative things, then just do the same reflections on only positive things. And when we do the Tonglen thing, do loving kindness. It's basically the same. Like loving kindness is kind of the second half of Tonglen, right? You don't need to breathe in any bad stuff. Just like send loving kindness to your network. And of course, then there's the same indications as usual. Like if you feel for some reason you get out of your window of tolerance, shift the focus back to positive things, or if it feels like too much, switch to things you know and you know that they make you feel good, like for example loving kindness or gratitude, or just open your eyes and stop meditating. That's always an option. And since we're not in the same space, and some of you I see, some I don't even see, I need to make sure that you take care of yourself. So please do that. And please let me know if something, if you encounter some issues, if it doesn't feel so good. Okay. Any questions here? Great. So then we will start the practice. Please start finding a comfortable sitting position. You can close your eyes or your camera if you want to. You don't have to. And start by arriving in the space. Maybe, see what sensations are present, sounds, smells, bodily sensations. You can, if you need or want, do some movements with your body. Make sure that it's nice and relaxed. Once you settle, make sure your spine is straight, like a little thread pulling you up from your head. And then have your shoulders relaxed down around that upright spine, taking a solid and relaxed position. And feel free to take a few deeper breaths if you want to. Good. We start with a short 4-step transition. In the first step, being aware of what's going on in the present moment. Your attention can go anywhere in the present moment, but as soon as it drifts away from the present moment, just bring it back to the present. Now gently bring the sensations of the body to the foreground. No need to push any sensation away. Just slightly turn up the volume on the body. If you detect any tensions, maybe attend to the place and see if you can relax it a little bit more. If you detect any pleasant sensations, feel free to linger on them a little bit. And now gently allow your attention to go towards breathing sensations. Any breath-related sensations. And feel where you can feel it clearly. And then allow your attention to rest on that set of sensations where you can feel the whole breath cycle quite clearly. Could be your belly, could be around the nose, throat. And let's count to 10 breaths, as you know from DMI. You want to stabilize your mind a little bit here. If it wanders, it's also okay. My mind wanders a lot these days. But I find it helpful to start by attending to the breath for a little bit. If the mind wanders, just be happy that you detected it and bring it back. Trying to keep your peripheral awareness or introspective awareness open to maybe detect deviations of the attention a little bit earlier. Okay. Now I invite you to scan the last 24 hours and pick one action, which is one or two actions which you would consider skillful, and one or two which you consider less skillful. And maybe for the first time, don't pick anything too hard or too heavy. We're now gonna do the meditation with just one of them actually, so that there's a little bit more time for questions at the end. And start with a good one. Pick any action which you consider skillful in the last 24 hours, or could also be a further time span, maybe an instance where you were generous or kind. And let your mind flow around the network of what caused this moment. What led to you being kind in that moment? Maybe the many things which allowed you to be kind in that moment. If there's any thankfulness in you right now, then gratitude in you right now, just feel that, acknowledge it. And you can look further. What caused this cause of your good behavior, or some of these causes of your good behavior to happen? What are the kind of causes of skillful behavior or of good, kind behavior? Good. And now let's look downstream. So you did something kind, or thought something kind, whatever it is. See what the consequences were, how this affected yourself and others. It can be effects you saw or things you imagine. That's fine. And also here, feel free to go broad, thinking of different effects it has, but also deep. Like, how could this permeate this network of cause and effect further? Whatever you did, it might very well affect your grandchildren or people on the other side of the world. And if anything here feels good, then feel free to rest on this. This per se is already enough of a good practice. Just by doing that, you get better. Or you have the chance to get better. Now gently wrapping up the first part, or coming to an end of this first part of the meditation. Let's pick another instance of this day where you felt there might have been a miss, or you could have behaved or acted in a more skillful way. Imagine this situation, bring it to mind, bring yourself to mind in this situation. If it helps to visualize it, you can visualize it. And now look at the causes and the history that led to this. Could be things you did before, causes and effects which somehow acted on you. Look at the variety of things which caused this action. And maybe look further what caused those things or actions or behaviors which caused the action. Maybe there are also some beliefs of which you hold of the world, of yourself, of others. Maybe check if they're correct, or if you want find anything you would like to correct there. And now you can go to the downstream side. Look at the effects. I invite you to look at the effects of this action you're contemplating, you're reflecting on. What did it do? You can go broad, looking at the different effects it had, or also deep, imagining it, how this permeates through the network. Now take a moment to think about what you would maybe have done differently, or what you could have done instead, and what consequences that might have had. Okay. And now imagine this unskillful action and its consequences, like smoke going through your day. And realize that you have the choice. You have the choice to do something about it. You have this very precious moment where you can affect these causal chains. And I invite you to imagine a bright light inside your chest, representing your wisdom and the recognition that you have a choice in this moment. And now, with each in-breath, imagine breathing in that smoke as a remembrance of the effects of what you did, and with the wish that you may remove it from your network. Imagine with each in-breath, cleaning your network from that negative stuff you brought into it. And inside you transform it into wisdom, into light, or you transform it with your wisdom. And you breathe out your wish, what you would like to be your reaction instead. Love, patience, wisdom, security, compassion, whatever it is. With each in-breath, cleaning the network, transforming this smoke into light, and then breathing out the light of your wisdom and love. If the mind strays, gently bring it back, being happy that you recognized it, and continue breathing in the smoke, cleaning your network, and breathing out wisdom and love and light. Also right now being at the center of this network and being aware that what you do now has consequences, and you might recognize the consequence next time you come into a similar situation or the result. Breathing in the smoke, breathing out love. This has very much the flavor of loving kindness. You may wish to imagine now the smoke getting lighter and lighter as you purified the network. And eventually the smoke disappears. And what remains is your wish for the well-being of your entire network, which is the entire network. I invite you to, as we start concluding the practice, share the merit of your practice. May this practice benefit all beings. May all beings be well. Hold this wish of love for your network, for those around you who are affected by you. And I really like by concluding with some loving kindness phrases. May they be well, be safe, have peace of mind, be happy for your whole network, including yourself. May this entire network be well. Be safe. Have peace of mind. Be happy. May this practice benefit all beings. Okay. We are gently closing the meditation. Take all the time you want and need. And when you're ready, you can come back to the room.